Whilst playing, watching, or even reading through the Inazuma Eleven Go saga, a lot of players tend to hyperfixate around characters that possess some sort of gimmick that drastically boosts their potency. Whether that be Keshin, Soul, form changes, arms, or Miximax, those mechanics set characters apart from the rest of the cast and add to their overall charm and appeal. However, this leads to a multitude of characters being overlooked and underrated for lacking said quirks. Among these individuals is someone I believe stands above them all, a gimmickless man in a generation in a world full of gimmicks. But despite this colossal disadvantage he's faced with, he still delivers and holds it down as Ryman's last line of defense. This man is Sangoku Taichi. And when you consider it all, I personally believe he's one of the greatest goalkeepers to ever make an appearance in Inazuma 11. In football in general, there is always a substantial volume of responsibility and faith placed on the keeper. Inazuma 11 is no different. Well, aside from fucking Orion, because the only players that mattered in the season were fucking strikers. You know, they had like fucking 9 strikers on the national team for some reason.
What the hell?
But anyway, this isn't an Orion rant, this is about Big Taichi. For those of you that don't know what a goalkeeper is, you're probably pretty fucking stupid because it's literally in the name. As the last line of defense, it's the goalkeeper's job to prevent the opposition from scoring goals at all costs, and failure to deliver could result in dire consequences. And when we look at the team that Sangoku has to hold it down for, there is even more responsibility placed on his shoulders. Raimon is the protagonist team, a team carrying the legacy of Endo's Raimon 11 as well as the franchise namesake, the Inazuma 11 themselves. Sangoku doesn't just have the responsibility of being the protagonist team's keeper, he has a responsibility of being what we as a community, or as a reader, as a watcher, as a player see as the backbone of the main team of this new generation, and everything level 5 has built up to this point. Furthermore, I also want to point out that they're the main team leading the resistance against the higher power that controls the entire sport and the vast majority of teams in the country. None of this would be that big of a deal if this was a generic football anime or game with kids playing regular football, or even the OG Inazuma 11 series where Hisatsu, physical abilities and stats, tactics played a massive role in the outcome of matches. The Inazuma 11 Go is different. OG Inazuma 11 was as close as realistically possible an anime could get to regular football while still including some gorgeous special moves and special tactics sprinkled around here and there. Then we had the occasional crackhead freak of nature appearing out of nowhere and showcasing to the viewer or player that biology and physics are merely just a polite suggestion in their universe. When I say gorgeous, I'm referring to the anime, manga and Wii games, because the DS games, they did have their own charm to them, but they were fucking crispy. In an environment like that, Sangoku would flourish, however in Go that's just not the case. As a strategy game, the OG series required as well as helped you improve your core strategic skills such as good observation, critical thinking, problem solving and your memory as well. Inazuma 11 Go does not fuck with that shit. You just pass to a character with a gimmick and you profit. Simple. Throughout the 3 seasons of the Go anime and the 3 installations of the Go games, there have been 4 match-defining gimmicks implemented into the series. For like a very dumbed down and simple explanation, Keshin and Fighting Spirits basically stands that certain players could summon throughout a match, which gave them a massive power up as well as allowed them to use a special Fighting Spirit move specific to that Fighting Spirit. Then there was Armed/Armorify, which allowed the user of a Fighting Spirit to wear it as a set of armor, which gave them an even bigger power up and allowed them to use their regular moves with a drastic spike in power. And these moves had no cost in Chrono Stones, you could just rapid fire off these shits for free in that game. But they did balance it a bit in Go Galaxy so that the cost of moves, well, the moves still costed something, it was just a lot less than the initial cost. Then there was Miximax, which was fucking absurd. It allowed the fusion of 2 characters or living organisms and then provided a large stat boost to the final product and potentially 2 extra moves or skills of your choice. We're talking like double big moves, double put your back into it, some crazy shit like that. But unless you're fucking Zanark and you somehow get consent from a fucking hurricane to fuse with it. And then finally there are souls/totems, which are basically the opposite of Fighting Spirits and armed in mechanics. gimmicks, kinda, because the more you use them, the more time passes and the stronger they get, as opposed to fighting spirits and armor fight getting weaker the more you use them, and eventually resulting in them disappearing. Souls and totems also allowed you to use a special totem strike, or soul attack, or soul strike, whatever you want to call it, which was basically a super strong move specific to that totem, which could further be boosted by landing a positive roll on the totem, kind of like RNG gotcha, like RNG roulette, and also gave a slight power up to your regular moves. Nothing crazy like armed or something like that. All of these mechanics being available on the field at once constantly throughout a match led to having a player or players that didn't possess at least one of these gimmicks minimum really underpowered and in some cases borderline useless. Sangoku got none of these. Put it in perspective, it's kind of like asking Yamcha to pull up to Jiren and run his fade. This shit just ain't happening. This led to him letting in quite a few goals on some occasions, and the community kind of just associates that with him, and like that's the only thing they associate with him. And I think this could be down to something known as the peak end cognitive bias. It states that people can sometimes judge an entire experience or an entire character based mostly on how the experience or how the character made them feel at the peak of intensity during an arc, story, or experience, as well as right at the end. An example of this could be Tokyo Revengers. Something I want to point out in the games is that Sangoku's catch stat starts out and remains as the highest in your party. For being the primary goal you have at the start, he does his job very well. And furthermore, in the Inazuma Eleven Go Light and Go Dark games, Sangoku has a higher base catch stat and overall potential catch stat than the main goalkeeper of Team Zero, which is pretty massive if you think about it. At least in the anime, a lot of consumers tend to miss the fact that despite being an underdog, despite being seen as underpowered, he comes in clutch a lot and is often able to stop these monstrous teams from scoring. An example that comes to mind is him being able to stop Zero Magnum in the movie, despite Team Zero absolutely donkey fucking the entire team for the entire match, demonstrating and reinforcing their vast difference in power. Yet he still stops it. Another example was in the FFI finals when he's able to stop an onslaught of Kenshin boosted shots, one after the other, back to back with offensive Gaia, and even at one point with a single regular punch. For me, Sangoku is somewhat symbolic of the story of David and Goliath. You have all these monstrous teams with terrifying offensive power through their gimmicks, against this gimmickless man just making use of what he has. And I think it's reinforced by one of his character themes being named Honmono no Suyosa, which according to Google Translate, this could be wrong, it means real strength. Which I think is pretty fitting when you think about it overall, because his strength isn't being augmented by anything. He didn't have a Miximax in the anime, he didn't have a Soul, well, Totem, whatever they're called. He didn't have a Keshin, he didn't have Keshin armed, he didn't have any gimmicks. That just came from him, that's his raw strength, his raw power, a real strength. And watching through the Go series again, it really opened my eyes to the fact that despite every possible odd conceivable being against him off rip, he really held it down for the team.
Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff, because this video took me the best part of 2 days to make, so any support would be appreciated.